Spring is in the air, folks. And you know what that means. Blue and white weekend is upon us. Per usual, Tim Aiden, Marty Leap from Diaries.com. Marty, sir, do you have a nice Easter?
Yeah, not too bad. Hung around the house, didn't do a whole lot. Got some chores done around the house, ate some good food, and you can't really beat that on any holiday, I feel.
Absolutely. And the rest of you watching who celebrate, we hope you enjoyed your Easter weekend as well. Before we get into the blue-white game, which is this coming Saturday, we're diving a bit into some very important recruiting news. I'm talking, of course, about VCU point guard Ace Baldwin transferring to Penn State's basketball team. No, I'm kidding. We're talking Quinton Martin, five-star recruit out of Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area. Ohio State was after him heavily. I know Pitt was in the mix, some other big-time programs. But Quinton Martin pulls a trigger for Penn State. Number one player state of Pennsylvania, top 50 recruit according to 24/7 Sports. Marty, you being BSD's recruiting guru, how huge is this for James Franklin to land the top dog in PA once again?
Yeah, it's big on a lot of fronts. This is the third consecutive cycle now. Penn State's landed the best player in Pennsylvania. Quinton Martin this year, Javon Williams last cycle, and Nick Singleton 2 years ago. We already see what Nick Singleton is doing at Penn State. And there's a lot of Nick Singleton and Quinton Martin's game. You mentioned top, five-star kid, top 50 type kid. Ohio State was in this one. Make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was a recruitment the Buckeyes wanted to win. To Penn State's credit, the staff stepped up in a lot of ways and made sure to keep Quinton Martin in state. Definitely seems to be a recruitment where NIL was a big deal, and it seems like Penn State was able to get a good NIL program or deal, or however you want to word it, put together for him, ready to go. So, yeah, a huge recruiting win for James Franklin. And, I don't think anyone is necessarily surprised that Quinton Martin committed to Penn State. But what might be surprising about Quinton Martin committing to Penn State was this early in the process. His recruitment long seemed like one that was going to drag on a little bit into the summer, maybe into the fall with some official visits. But to get a kid like him in the boat this early, it's big because it allows him to peer recruit. He's a player kids know. He's a player other highly rated recruits are going to want to play with. I would make the argument he's the best player to come out of Pennsylvania since Micah Parsons. So, yeah, just huge recruiting victory for James Franklin and Nittany Lions, not just to get Quinton Martin in the fold, but to get him in the fold this early.
Absolutely. And he wasn't the only 2024 kid to pledge allegiance to Penn State in the past week. Another kid, John Mitchell out of Jacksonville, Florida, four-star cornerback. It looks like to me, Marty, this is just Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter continuing to stack up in the secondary.
Absolutely. John Mitchell, another top 100 kid, probably their top cornerback target this cycle. Pulling him out of Florida is huge. He was on campus 2 weekends ago for like a 2 or 3 day visit, committed during the visit, had his teammate Antoine Belgrave Shorter with him, another cornerback. And if you're not watching us live, depending on what time you're listening to us on Monday, based off some of the smoke, Belgrave Shorter might be in the fold by then also. So yeah, like you said, another great recruiting win by Terry Smith. And hey, whenever you can go out there and promote to these kids. Look, we had 2 All-American cornerbacks last year. We're about to have a cornerback go in the first round this year. With Kalen King, we're going to have another cornerback go in the first round next year. That kind of thing sells itself in recruiting. You look at Penn State, since the early Franklin years, thanks to Saquon Barkley and Mike Gesicki, running back and tight end are 2 positions that have recruited themselves. And because of Joey Porter Jr. and Kalen King, cornerback may be on its way to being a position like that also. So yeah, that's great for Penn State, and especially with the direction in which college football is trending, where being able to stop the pass is so important. Be able to be viewed as a school where, hey, I can go there as a highly touted cornerback. They're going to develop me. put me in the league, if not in the first round, in the early rounds. And I'm going to have success. Yeah, that kind of thing will sell itself. And I think we're starting to see that paired with Terry Smith's ability to just form relationships with people. Anyone who's ever met Terry Smith will tell you he's one of those people who, it doesn't matter if it's the first time you've met him or if you've known him your entire life, you're going to walk away from that conversation feeling better about yourself than you did beforehand. I can attest to that from a couple times in my life. I've run into Terry at places and made some small talk with him. So yeah, I think that's a factor there. And just getting Mitchell and Martin in the fold, huge. 2 top 100 kids, 2 borderline 5-star kids, your top running back target, your top cornerback target. And now you allow them to peer recruit for you as well. Big gets early in the cycle for Penn State.
Hard not to agree with that, Marty. And also, you mentioned before we started the show, they got a 2025 commit recently on Omari Gaines, safety out of Newark, New Jersey. Currently does not have a rating for 24/7, but he is a rising junior in high school, so I imagine he'll get one soon. And I have no idea, but it sounds like it's a huge get. So I'm figure he'll probably, at the very least, be a high 3-star or if not a 4-star.
Yeah, that's what I would think. And one thing to mention with Gaines too, in the New Jersey kind of like Pop Warner ball 7-on-7 type scene where relationships are formed, there may not be anyone in the state of New Jersey more tied in and more connected than his dad. So, getting Father Gaines into the Penn State family could be one that could really pay dividends in the long run. And that's not taking away from Omari. He's a tremendous player. Like you said, probably going to be a high 3, low 4-star kid. Definitely a kid who's going to have a good career at Penn State. But whenever you bring those kind of connections and family ties along with it, you're never going to say no to that. So yeah, another great gift for Penn State in more ways than one.
And he actually is not the only 2025 kid committed. The first one to do that was Jalen Matthews, high 4-star kid. He's actually number 1 rated kid in the state of New Jersey for the 2025 class. So already Penn State's landing big fish from the state of New Jersey, which is a state that in the past they've had their struggles with recruiting wise. So it's really nice to see that happen. And, and hopefully kind of like also we talked about with, Philly recruiting and, Deion Barnes now having a full-time coaching job on staff at defensive end. Perhaps there's some doors that are going to open up there too in the future. So future definitely looks bright for Penn State from a recruiting standpoint right now. And we're diving into our next segment. Just want to thank everyone who's watching tonight. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to us on the Penn State Voice of College Football channel. If you haven't already done so, I really appreciate it. We're trying to grow that channel. Lots of good content. It's not just Marty and I yapping at each other. We also have Mark himself does early schedule previews. There's another guy who does like betting lines during the season. We also even have simulations like for the NCAA football 14 video game. Perhaps a year from now, we'll be using the NCAA football 25 video game, where they call the revived version that's supposed to come out next summer. But we also have simulations like that. So a lot of good content on that channel, and we'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed there. Now, Marty, speaking of recruiting, the Light Weekend's coming up this weekend. That's a 2:00 kickoff at Beaver Stadium. Weather looks like it's going to be lovely in the mid-70s, mostly sunny or just partly cloudy. Not really, rain's not going to be a factor. So great day for tailgating, great day for football. Big Ten Network's televising it live. And most importantly, though, it's also a huge recruiting weekend for the team.
Yeah, huge recruiting weekend. In the world of Penn State football recruiting, there are 3 weekends every calendar year that rise above the rest. There's the Whiteout, there's a Lash Bash at the end of July, and there's the Blue-White weekend. You're probably looking at 80 to 100 kids on campus this weekend who, most of them are legitimate, offered by good enough to play at Penn State level kind of kids. With the Blue-White weekend, you normally see at least 1 or 2 commitments as a direct result that weekend. And, it also lays the groundwork for a lot of commitments down the road. definitely going to be a couple kids to watch this weekend. You look on the offensive line, Kevin Haywood, William Satterwhite, two kids who have visited Penn State about 1,000,000 times. Penn State seems to be the front runner for both of them. Would not be surprised to see them wrap it up this weekend. I already mentioned Belgrave Shorter, teammate of John Mitchell, who could commit this week. So it could be another busy week for Penn State on the recruiting trail on that front. But yeah, the staff does a tremendous job with these things. And I think one thing too that makes the blue-white weekend such a great recruiting weekend is just the Penn State fan base in general. There are very few spring games in the country. I mean, hell, there are very few regular season games in the country you can go to that's going to have 75,000 fans at it. At Penn State, the blue-white game is going to have 75,000 fans at it. It's a tremendous atmosphere. The tailgate lots are going to be packed. These kids are going to experience an atmosphere that's going to be better than they would experience at a lot of regular season games across the country. And that goes a long way. You'll see kids who visit for blue white. And I'm like, man, with what that place was like for this, I can't even imagine what it's like for a real game. And how could you not want to play in front of that and all that sort of stuff? So yeah, huge recruiting weekend on tap, a lot of peer recruiting to be done. I would expect most, if not all of their current commits to be back on campus. And again, when you can throw a guy like Quinton Martin out there, who everybody knows who he is, and he can peer recruit for you on a weekend like this, that's one that could go a long way, both in the immediate future and down the road. So yeah, it should be a very, very busy recruiting weekend in Happy Valley.
No doubt. And actually, I will be up there that weekend, so I will hopefully be carousing around a couple tailgates and also catching some of the action in the stadium. I usually don't stick around the whole game. I usually just maybe stay for like a half or so, just see some of the talent that's playing there. Which, speaking of which, I guess a couple of things that I'm, excited, interested in seeing is, I guess first and foremost, see what Drew Hour looks like. He obviously, last year he played in the spring game. It wasn't his best outing. Threw a couple interceptions. Seemed a bit lost out there at times, and there were rumors at the time. Not rumor, but there was chatter at the time that Bo Prabula, his classmate, and right now presumed backup, was ahead of him. That changed over the course of that summer, as we all saw. Hour came in to spell for Sean Clifford briefly in that Purdue game. It looked pretty poised out there. Didn't have a deer in the headlights look, but I'm really curious to see how, the anointed one looks on Saturday. I can't imagine he'll get a whole lot of run. I'm sure the staff wants to make sure he's healthy going into fall camp, but I'm sure they'll definitely let him play a few series to, showcase his stuff to the fans. You're going to see a lot of Bo Prabula, I would imagine, and also a lot of Jackson Smolik as well. Smolik being the early enrollee freshman who was originally committed to Tulane and then Penn State nabbed him later on. So we'll see a lot of that. And also, I'm excited. I know we did a segment on Blackshire Diaries about this. I won't spoil who your guy was. I'll let you talk about him. But for me, it was Tony Rojas, freshman early enrollee linebacker. The more I read this kid, I'm thinking he might be the second coming of Abdul Carter. He's already a very explosive, hard-hitting kid. He came in with a pretty good physique, but he's since, according to coach staff, put on 29 pounds and has still maintained his explosiveness for the most part. So I'm really, and I know there's going to be, I'm sure, some limitations on hitting, especially in the quarterback, but I'm just curious to see him flying around on the field and, seeing what he's made of. I think this is a kid who's definitely going to be a part of the linebacker rotation. And I don't know, maybe like Carter, maybe he finds a way to get a starting role towards the end of the season. But at the very least, I mean, he is solidly going to be a part of the rotation, assuming he stays healthy. Marty, what are a couple of things that you're looking forward to or you want to see out of the blue-white game?
Yeah, first off with Tony Rojas, I'll agree with you, man. I'm excited to see him. I was already excited with Rojas. For those who don't know, Rojas was a borderline 5-star recruit last year, picked Penn State over Georgia, And it wasn't oh, Georgia didn't want him, so Penn State got him. No, Georgia wanted this kid bad. Georgia was ready to roll out the red carpet for Rojas, and to Penn State's credit, they were able to fend Georgia off. And especially the reports that there's been, a lot of linebacker look this year in the spring with Rojas, Carter, and Jacobs. This might, it's getting ahead of ourselves a bit, but that could be one of the most, maybe the most athletic, most physically gifted trio of linebackers we've ever seen at Penn State to be on the field all together at the same time, which would be saying something, obviously. But no, for who I'm most excited for, it's Keandre Lambert-Smith. Penn State has needed him to take a step forward for some time now. And last year, he seemed to really start doing that down the end, was really good against Michigan State, had a great game in the Rose Bowl against Utah, highlighted by that, 88-yard touchdown catch, I believe.
Yep.
And Lambert-Smith is a kid who in the past would kind of be his own worst enemy at times, have some issues with confidence after drops. And it seems like he's really overcome that. You ask him, he does not hide the fact he believes he is going to step up and be the number one wide receiver for this team in 2023. And I'm excited to see it because if Keandre Lambert-Smith can take that step forward and then you get what you're expecting to get from Dante Cephas when he arrives on campus in June, and you get what you're expecting out of these tight ends, you have one more receiver step up, which just, the math alone tells you at least one more receiver will step up. This offense can be scary good next year. And while we're on the topic of receivers stepping up, it sounds like Trey Wallace has had a tremendous spring as well, who's one of the most physically gifted receivers on this roster. Trey was a kid last year's redshirt freshman, flashed at times, had a couple of big catches in the Rose Bowl. So for me, it's Keandre Lambert-Smith, but these wide receivers in general, I'm very excited to see what they do. And I think one thing also, and this is no way, shape, or form a knock on Sean Clifford, but with Drew Aller, you expect to have the kind of quarterback who can throw receivers open. So I think that can help the receiver room also. So I'll be curious to watch that on Saturday as well, just to see where Drew is at with his timing with some of these receivers.
Indeed. And I guess speaking more about the offense, you mentioned Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think he's definitely seems poised to make himself, the top number one, or maybe like number 1A or 1B if Dante Cephas is also an, top dog. Like the two of them could be leading that group. But then, Trey Wallace, like you mentioned, it sounds like he's having a great spring. So that's great. I also want to see just who else steps up in the receiving core. And then, of course, the tight end group, which, I got the comment up there about the tight end room being crazy good, which, yes, Argra, I definitely agree. They return Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren. And they also bring in Andrew Rappelier, true freshman, who I think, and Marty, I think he has to do. He's a guy who's just such a physical specimen. He's going to be too much to not put on the field in some capacity. So I think that room's also pretty stacked. The running backs, I wouldn't expect to. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Singleton and Allen just sit that one out. We know what they're made of. They don't need to prove anything, show anything at this point. I said the same thing about Saquon Barkley. Just put him in bubble wrap until, summer workouts begin again. And then, so we'll probably see more of, probably the walk-ons. I don't know if London Montgomery or Cam Wallace early enrolled.
But no, neither of them did. They both will be here later this summer.
They won't. Okay, so you won't see them. So you'll probably see a lot of Tank Smith.
The Tank Smith show, which I'm all for the Tank Smith show.
I don't know. I know they also, speaking of running backs, former Minnesota back Trey Potts recently portaled to Penn State. Don't know if he's arrived on campus yet, or if I can't imagine he'll play in the spring game if he just portaled in. So, but you may maybe get a glimpse of him on the sidelines at least. But critical number 3 running back piece there, because right now it's Singleton and Allen, but if one of them gets hurt, you'd rather not be relying on Montgomery and Wallace to step in their place. So Potts gives you that stability as that third wheel who can step in. I'm sure he'll get a few carries during the season as well, just to give the guys a breather. So there's that. But of course, I'd be remiss on the offense. Didn't talk about the offensive line, which is led by the return of Olufashanu. Marty, any thoughts about that? I know you're a big O-line guy yourself.
Yeah, as the former offensive lineman of the group of BSD, it's a fine art I appreciate, and I have a special spot for in my heart. But yeah, to me, what's most exciting about this offensive line is just, man, when's the last time Penn State had a 2 deep, maybe even a 3 deep, where you're like, all right, I feel good about all of these guys. It's been a long freaking time. No position group was hit harder by the sanctions than the offensive line. No position group has taken longer to recover. But here we are. You're going to go into next year. I think like 7 guys, I want to say 7 or 8 guys who've started at least, I think, 7 games in their collegiate career. That's some really good depth. And then you're going to throw in Vega Ione, who, man, he looks like he's just going to be almost impossible to keep off the field this year. You get Landon Tangwell back from injury. Yeah, I'm excited for this offensive line. Obviously, next Saturday, or this Saturday, I should say, we're not going to see much of Olufashanu. We're probably not going to see Landon Tangwell at all. They took it pretty easy on him this spring. Hunter Norzad's been banged up, just some offseason cleanup surgeries. And, Norzad's projected to be your starting center. I doubt we see him. But I like that because, I want to see, let's see what JB Nelson can do. Let's see what Nick Dawkins can do. Let's see Vega Ione go out there and maul some people. Some of these young offensive linemen you've heard a lot of good things about. Let's see what they can do. Let them get these reps so in the fall, if you need them, they have, you feel good about it. So yeah, I'm excited. I love great offensive line play. I know it's boring for most people, but man, I love watching an offensive line go up there and, hey, we're going to run the ball right at you, try and stop it, and just maul you play after play. I can speak from, obviously it's totally different high school football versus playing in college, but I can speak as someone's been the side of that. It's demoralizing. It beats you down as a defense when you know what's coming and you can't stop it because that offensive line is just too dang good. And I feel like Penn State's really close to being there. So yeah, I'm really excited for this offensive line and for the amount of depth they have and just the amount of just large, incredibly athletically gifted human beings they have that they can go out there and throw at people now.
Absolutely. Speaking of lines, I throw the D line for a bit. Obviously, what Chop Robinson brings to the table and Disa Isaac. I'm curious to see who, what the middle of that D line looks like. And, I like to see maybe a healthy dose of Denai Dennis Sutton. See what he can do in that spring game. We talked about him a lot as a stud recruit, and he did flash at times last year when he got action. But hopefully he can take a next step and really become a key part of that rotation. And then, of course, we talk about the linebackers. I mentioned, I talked about Roberto Rojas, but of course you have Abdul Carter, Curtis Jacobs, probably, I would guess Kobe King might be the third one, him or Tyler Elsdon. But you definitely feel better about that group than you did a year ago. And then, of course, the secondary, which even losing Jair Brown and Joey Porter Jr., that's a group that doesn't look like it's going to miss a beat, thanks to guys like Kalen King and Johnny Dixon coming back, Keaton Ellis, and then you also got a nice portal addition in Storm Duck. So, Marty, you look at the defense, and I guess what are you most looking forward to seeing there?
Yeah, there's not a lot to not look forward to on the defense, honestly. Personally, I'm going to be watching the defensive tackles very closely. That's probably the biggest position of concern on the entire team going into 2023. Kazai Izzard, James Franklin's already said, really getting the veteran treatment this spring. He's a little banged up. So you're not going to see him at all on Saturday, I would assume. But I want to see Zane Durant. I think Durant can really explode this year, have a big year. I want to see Jordan Vandenberg. I don't know how much of Devon Ellies we'll see or Hakeem Beeman. They probably get a little bit of veteran treatment also. Devon Townley, another kid sliding inside this year. I'm excited to see in the spring game. But yeah, this defense is, I don't think it's a stretch to say this could be the best defense in the Big Ten this year. You combine what they have coming back with what they do well, with the fact that their defensive coordinator is widely viewed as, I mean, what, Manny, you got to say is probably what, top 10 defensive coordinator in the country, at least in the discussion. The dude's really good at what he does. He's got a lot of talent. And this pass rush, though, I don't expect to see a lot of it on Saturday because, A, you're not going to try and get your own quarterback killed, and B, a lot of these guys are going to play a ton. But just to look into the regular season a little bit, man, you could go into pass rushing situations with Adiza Isaac and Chop Robinson coming off the edge, Zane Durant and Denai Dennis Sutton from the inside, and Abdul Carter just kind of roaming around of, hey, Abdul, just go get the quarterback. I don't know how you block that as an offense. I'm glad I don't have to try and figure out how to block that as an offense. And I'm glad Penn State doesn't have to face that, because that could be one of the nastiest pass rushes in the country. But yeah, there's a lot to like about this defense. And the secondary, you mentioned it, you lose a lot. Replacing Tig Brown's not going to be easy, not just because of the player he was after the ball was snapped, but he did a lot for this team pre-snap and just getting the defense lined up and reading plays. But by all accounts, Keaton Ellis has had a huge spring. KJ Winston and Zakee Wheatley both seem to be budding stars at safety. And you mentioned cornerback, Storm Duck, Johnny Dixon, Daquan Hardy, Kalen King might be a better cornerback. I know Joey Porter's got the higher ceiling with the length and everything. Kalen King might be a better all-around quarterback than JPJ. Yeah, just an incredible amount of talent on this defense. And, I think this defense is a big reason why a lot of Penn State people have this year circled as, if it's ever going to be the year, they're going to take that step forward with the playoff. This could be the year, because, yeah, you're going to have another year of Drew Aller after this year, another year of Nick Singleton. But this defense could be a potentially elite unit this year, and it's going to be really exciting just to kind of watch that come together.
For sure. I also be remiss if we don't talk a little bit about special teams. So Jake Pinniger decided to forego his extra COVID year and enter the NFL draft. Wish him all the best. So now at kicker, you got Sanders Zahadak coming back, and also got Mitchell Groh, and then Columbia transfer Alex Felkins. So they will, imagine they'll be battling it out for place kicking and kickoff duties. Not sure how that's going to shake out. I haven't really seen any practice reports that seem to indicate who's got the edge there. So that'll be kind of a mystery to something to see on Saturday, who's doing what. And I'm sure they'll all get a chance to showcase what they're made of. A punter, that's looking like a battle between the Florida Atlantic transfer Riley Thompson and sophomore Alex Bichetta. So actually got a pair of scholarship punters there, but I would guess if they brought in this guy out of Florida Atlantic for his last year, I would think he's probably being brought in to be the starter, but we'll see about that. And then returning as far, I think for kickoffs, I'd expect to see a healthy dose of Nick Singleton back there. And punt returner, that remains a mystery. Not quite sure who's going to step up there, but maybe one of the receivers or cornerback, something. Marty, any thoughts about special teams? Thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Riley Thompson, you don't bring him in on scholarship if you don't expect him to be your punter. He was a freshman All-American. Obviously, the kid's pretty good. And for place kicker, it seems like Gabe Nwosu, who did a lot of it last year, has probably emerged as the guy there for kickoffs. I mean, place kicker up in the air. I mean, Sanders Zahadak has a huge leg, but if you don't have the accuracy, the huge leg doesn't do you a lot of good. And for Felkins, we'll see what he does. That's definitely going to be, I think, one position of concern going into the year is going to be place kicker. The last thing you want to see is a season, and God, as Penn State fans, we've seen this before. You don't want to see a season where you're a national championship caliber squad get wasted or get ruined because of place kicking. We saw it in 99, we saw it in 2008. So hopefully that doesn't rear its ugly head this year. For return guys, I think, One of the most under the radar aspects of picking up Trey Potts is it makes it a lot easier to let Nick Singleton return kicks, because if he gets dinged up back there, you now have an additional scholarship back, and not just some schlum. Like Potts has averaged 5 yards per carry in the Big Ten in his career. The kid's a very good running back. Punt returner, yeah, I'll be curious. Maybe Keandre Lambert-Smith. He's a guy who can make things happen with the ball in open space. I wouldn't hate seeing Caden Saunders back there, redshirt freshman to be, former top 50 recruit, elite speed, elite agility, and quickness. I think he could be a terror for opposing teams as a punt returner also. So we'll see what happens. But Daquan Hardy maybe as well. But they definitely have a lot of good options for back there. But like I said, to me, when it comes to special teams, the big thing this year is going to be place kicking, because we saw a team in 99 and we saw a team in 2008 that both those teams were probably good enough to win national title. I mean, 99 definitely obviously was going to win national championship, have seasons derailed in games that they lost by field goal. And, it was not like they lost because Penn State missed kicks, but you see where that place kicking can really impact the season. So hopefully it doesn't impact Penn State in a negative way this year.
Indeed. So that's actually kind of not all Marty and I have to talk about on our end, but we've been looking for your comments over the course of this show, and appreciate all the banter going on in there. And we did find some interesting comments and questions that we'd like to address at this point. I think one that caught my eye here from Manny asking, is this the best defense that James Franklin has ever had? I would be inclined to say so, just based on what we've just talked about. I don't know about you, Marty.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at some of the great defenses they've had, one thing that this one stands out, because I've mentioned a lot, you look at 2017. This team is going to be compared to 2017 a lot, because 2017 was, up until now, James Franklin's best team. That team was good enough to make the playoff and compete for a national title. One thing that defense did not have, and it killed them against Ohio State in what is still to this day the most brutal loss of the James Franklin era, not having that true defensive game record. If they would have had that, I have no doubts they would have beaten the Buckeyes in Columbus that year, and that team would have gone to the playoff. They have that. They have that in Abdul Carter. Hell, they might have that in Chop Robinson and denied Dennis Sutton as well. They might have multiple game records on this defense, but they for sure have at least one in Abdul Carter. You combine that with how deep they are across the board on defense. You've got NFL guys at every level. You've got, with the exception of defensive tackle and maybe safety, you've got guys that are first-round talents at every level on this defense. And like I said, safety, it's a maybe, because KJ Winston or Zakee Wheatley being a first-round pick one day wouldn't be a total stunner. This defense is loaded. They're deep. They've got game records. Yeah, I think this is definitely the most talented defense James Franklin's had at Penn State.
Yeah, and I think I definitely like the comparison you make to 2017, and yeah, I think they lack that. They lack the game record. I mean, I think back really that D-line just not able to generate any kind of a pass rush, because Ryan Buchholz, probably their best D lineman on that squad, went down with an injury late in the game, or the second half, and so did their best offensive lineman probably, and Ryan Bates going down for the O-line. So I mean, just once those two went down, it was they couldn't hold off a pass rush, and they couldn't generate a pass rush, and it just allowed JT Barrett to just continually pick them apart. So and I was actually, it's funny you mentioned Abdul Carter. I was watching, someone posted on the Lions 20% match board, but they showed the clip of Carter just weaving around the O-line and just sacking CJ Stroud. Like it was late in the first half when Ohio State was trying to drive. They were down by a point, and they ended up not scoring, so they were trying the half. But it's just such a freakish athletic kind of play, and I'm just again it just gets me excited to watch things like that, and it makes me hopeful that they're gonna take that leap forward, win another Big Ten title under Franklin, and finally crash the playoff, or at least crash a playoff while it's still 4 teams. I'd be pretty confident they can make the 12-team playoff starting in 2024. But it sure would be nice if they could make the final 4-team playoff before expansion. And they certainly have the capability to do that. Obviously, we've got to at least get a split between Ohio State and Michigan if that's going to become a reality. And, speaking of which, I think we had a couple questions.
Real quick at that. They played in and won the final true traditional Rose Bowl, so you might as well go play in and win the final true 14 playoff, right?
Exactly. Speaking of Michigan, Michigan, obviously Michigan fan. Michigan Penn State should be good. I still like Michigan. We have too much production coming back. That's I think I saw someone else had a comment in there about the line currently being 1.5 for Michigan's favor, which sounds about right. I mean, they've won the last 2. They've won back-to-back Big Ten championships, beating Ohio State last 2 years in a row. So they deserve some benefit of the doubt. And matchup-wise, that's probably the team that concerns me most because of their physicality and how they just push people around with that offensive line. So, but I would imagine, I'm sure that game still sticks in Manny Diaz's craw to this day. And it's a game I'm sure he has circled. And, with that being in Happy Valley as opposed to the Big House, I think it'll be a dogfight. Obviously, I'm not ready to make a prediction on that game either way, but I don't see it being the one-sided affair it was last year.
Yeah, that's how I am. I mean, this series has very much in recent years, with the exception of 2020, which you can throw out because of COVID, and 2021 favored the home squad. Obviously Penn State won in the Big House in 2020, Michigan won Happy Valley in 21, but again, 2020 was COVID. 21, by the time Penn State played Michigan, that Penn State team was just decimated by injuries. I think it's going to be a great matchup. Michigan, really good team. I mean, that running back duo, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Honestly, Corum and Edwards and Singleton and Allen might be the 2 best running back duos in all college football. It's not going to be easy for Penn State. Like you said, they're a squad Penn State does not match up well with. But hey, we'll see. Penn State has done, for the most part, has done a pretty good job against Michigan at home. And it should be a great game. I think obviously it's this way pretty much every year, and it goes without saying, but Penn State, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, those 3 games, whatever shakes out in those 3 is not just going to decide the Big Ten East, but likely decide the Big Ten and probably decide a college football playoff berth.
I would not surprise me in the least bit if that ends up being what decides the Big Ten championship. Felipe, as is Penn State finally going to finish with an undefeated season, or are they going to let me down? Okay. Felipe, Marty and I will be doing our annual schedule run-through show sometime in August, so you'll want to tune in for that. We'll also put a predictions roundtable together every year close to the start of the season on Black Shoe Diaries, so you also want to read that too to see what our final predictions are. Undefeated seasons, I'll say, it's in this day and age, it's very difficult to pull off. So I would be kind of pleasantly surprised if they do go undefeated, because that would involve having to beat both Ohio State and Michigan. And while I'm reasonably confident they can get a split to win both those games, that's going to be tough. And then, of course, college football can college football sometimes. So there's, could be some potential trap games on the road they'll have to get through as well. So, kind of like James Franklin likes to say, focus on being 1-0 this week. So, time will tell on that one. Let's see. Joe would love to see Penn State rise from the ashes and win the Big Ten, then play Notre Dame in the playoffs or national championship game. That would be nice if it happened. And I don't know. I guess me still being a bit annoyed that Notre Dame poached Micah Shrewsbury from Penn State's basketball program. I sure wouldn't mind getting a crack at them in some capacity like
Yeah,
that.
there are a few things in the world, and this even predates the Coach Shrews stuff. There are a few things in the world that put a bigger smile on my face than watching Penn State beat Notre Dame in the playoff. I always tell people I went to Catholic school my entire life. When you do, you either grow to love Notre Dame or grow to despise Notre Dame, and I was definitely in the latter of that group. So there are a few things in the world I would enjoy more than watching Penn State eliminate Notre Dame from the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those teams. I mean, I remember when I started following Penn State football in 1991. I mean, when they were still independent, they were playing Notre Dame every year, and that's just kind of ingrained me. Like, that's just not a team you're supposed to like, you know. So it's always a team like, you know, if Penn State gets a chance to play them, like I mean, I'm definitely intrigued. So we'll see, Joe. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe we'll get our wish. Let's see. Through here. Oh, speaking of old rivalry, Rod Farva says, nice to see Penn State West Virginia rivalry return this year and next. Yeah, I agree, Rod. I mean, if you look at the history, it's pretty one-sided rivalry. Like Penn State's dominated that series. But you know, I am old enough to remember when I started following, it was like the last, you know, couple years before they joined the Big Ten. So I do remember playing West Virginia a couple times, and those are always kind of enjoyable. So, you know, it'd be nice to, you know, see that home and home happen. And given that I live a few hours from Morgantown, I know that this year it's in State College, but 2024 they're playing in Morgantown to open the season. So I'm definitely every game maybe I'll try and get to when that happens. So yeah, but it's kind of cool to play some of these schools they haven't played, and it's been 31 years. It was 1992 was the last time they played them, so this will be their first time playing the Mountaineers since becoming a Big Ten member, which kind of crazy to me.
With West Virginia, I'm with you. I also plan to have every intention of trying to travel down to Morgantown when they go there to start the year. I mean, for me, it's a little over an hour to Morgantown from where I'm at, so it'll be an easy trip, and yeah, it'll be fun. A nice little regional rivalry. I always felt that the ultimate demise of the Big East Conference was their failure to get a just true East Coast Conference with West Virginia, Pitt, and Penn State as kind of the big three anchoring it. I mean, I know that's something that Joe Paterno always long pushed for, and it never happened. And looking back on it, I'm sure there's a lot of people wishing it would have happened. But
a lot of the basketball like Jim Boeheim and also as coaches of like the basketball only schools like St. John's, Georgetown, I think pushed back on that.
Yeah, they were always the big issues because they didn't want it because they didn't want football to prioritize. But ultimately, football was always going to win out anyway. But I digress. But yeah, no, I think it'll be a fun rivalry. And I like it too, even from a standpoint of it's nice to know Drew Allar's first career start is not going to be against like Delaware or something. Like I kind of like him getting. I mean,
game two.
Yeah, game two would be Delaware, but not the West Virginia. I mean, West Virginia is not going to be a great team or anything, but they're a Big 12 team, perfectly capable of going to a bowl game. So I like that his first career start is going to come against a team with somewhat of a pulse. You know, make him have to earn things a little bit, not just, you know, throw him out there with no adversity whatsoever. I think that's something that definitely could prove to be beneficiary for Penn State also.
Yes, Jason, O'Doyle rules. Always appreciate a good Billy Madison reference on this show.
Great movie.
Some other kind of not Penn State related, but these are just things I started. There was interesting chatter, and I know we're not a Nebraska show, but Matt Rhule, head coach, is a former Penn State player and beloved alum, and so Jason's saying I think it'll take year 3 before Rhule starts making noise in the Big Ten. Yeah, I think I will be kind of watching, you know, from the corner of my eye how Nebraska does with year 1 under Matt Rhule. I think the goal right now is just can you get to 6 wins in a bowl game, because that's something they haven't done since 2016, which is, just mind blowing to me as someone who's old enough to remember those that Nebraska dynasty in the mid late 90s that won like 3 national titles under Tom Osborne, and still remained a strong program into the early part of the 2000s. But they just tailed off over the years, and really in the last several years have fallen on some hard times. So I think Rule's a guy to get that turned around. And I haven't looked at the schedule very closely, but I would think if the talent they have, and the coaching in place, I think 6 wins in a bowl game is a pretty reasonable goal for them. I think it's something they could probably attain if things go right. But yeah, as far as making noise though, it might give it a year or two. And I think I'll say maybe year 3, maybe year 2, even depending on how he does in the portal, because especially in basketball, but even in football, I mean, if you can find a bunch of guys out of the portal to supplement your recruiting, you can rebuild quicker than you used to in the pre-portal days. So, Marty, I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, the portal thing's big because it makes it a lot easier to rebuild in a hurry in today's world. And we'll see. I'll be curious to see what Rule does with Nebraska. I'm with you. To me, it's wild to think Nebraska has made a bowl game since 2016. Like I remember, you're a few years older than me, but I still remember as a kid, like some of those teams, even early 2000s, like Eric Crouch, and just they were good. They were really good. And then even through the Bo Pelini year, still winning 9-10 games a year, and Adama Su should have won the Heisman Trophy, and they've just completely fallen apart. I mean, Mike Riley was a disaster hire. Scott Frost looked like the ultimate home run hire and just was – I don't think anybody could have fathomed how poorly the Scott Frost hire was going to go. I mean, I thought that was going to be a great hire for them.
I think everybody did.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm not as high on Rule as a coach as some people, but I think he can do good things in Nebraska. I think he can get Nebraska back at least respectable, winning 7, 8, 9 games, getting to some bowl games. But yeah, Nebraska definitely, it's crazy to see that program being in the state it's currently in.
Absolutely. This one, going back to the 90s here, 97, the Michigan and the 97 Nebraska team should have played for a national title. Yes. It's really a shame those two teams. That was so. Well, history lesson for those of you a little too young to remember. 1997 was the last year before the BCS was formed, which pitted the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams according to BCS rankings. They would play for the national championship. Prior to that, though, it was all about how you finished in the polls, and so. Michigan and Nebraska, Michigan beat Washington State in the Rose Bowl. Nebraska beat up on Peyton Manning's Tennessee team in the Orange Bowl. And they both ended up, I think one of them was voted number 1 in the AP. The other one was voted number 1 in the coaches poll. So they ended up having a split national championship. It was one of the last split national championships ever in college football. But it's definitely a shame those two teams did not have a chance to face each other in the field. That 97 Michigan defense was out of this world. And I still remember I was at the Penn State Michigan game in Beaver Stadium. I think I was 8th grade at the time. And that defense was just, I remember from the first play, Mike McQuarrie goes back to pass, and they just, before you knew it, they're just in Penn State's backfield, and they just seemed like several steps faster at every position than Penn State was. And I mean, it was just thorough domination. And so, that team definitely stuck out to me. And that Nebraska team, pretty solid too. Although I definitely remember, they needed a little miracle kick in the end zone to play for overtime at Missouri and avoid a big upset loss, which would have cost them a title otherwise. But I really would have liked to see those teams play each other. I know I think the NCAA video game the following year, you could play as those two teams, and pit them against each other. But it's really a shame we never had to see it happen on the field.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I think. Stick with Nebraska, 1994, Penn State and Nebraska. It really is a shame that pre-BCS era we didn't get to see some more of those games. I mean, obviously you had some years, look at Miami, Penn State, and the Fiesta Bowl, the clearly two best teams played in the bowl game for the national championship. But no, that would have been that was one of the things that always kind of hurt college football before the BCS. Obviously, was that failure to have that, and in the '90s, you were going to see Nebraska pop up with that a lot. Obviously,
Yeah, that '94 Nebraska team ruined my childhood.
yeah. I mean, I don't care what anybody says, and I mean, obviously, you and I are both biased here, but I'm convinced Penn State cooks Nebraska in '94 had they played.
Oh, I tell Nebraska people that like all the time. I'm like, yeah, look, you got that redshirt defense was good, but if Penn State was able to spot Illinois, who had like the top scoring defense in the country at the time, by 21 points in the first quarter, still come back and beat them, they were not going to get shut down by anyone.
Yeah,
so
no, that '94 offense would have
rolled.
Not to go off on a tangent or anything, but I've always thought one of the biggest what ifs. What if Kajana Carter goes to the NFL and doesn't tear his knee? Because I think he would have been very special in the NFL.
Yeah, that career kind of ended before it really began in the pros, unfortunately. But still a very beloved figure amongst the Penn State faithful. So good to see him thriving. But anyway, that's it for us. Thanks everyone for tuning in, for commenting. Really appreciate the engagement. As far as before I talk about what's next, just remember, like and subscribe. Penn State Voice of College Football channel. If you haven't done so yet, I really wanted to help grow the channel. As far as what plans for Marty and I, as far as shows for the rest of the off season, unless there's some maybe major breaking news that merits a separate show, we probably won't have anything up until probably around August. We'll do our schedule rundown show. We have one. If you sift through our channel, you'll find the one from last August. So we'll do one of those again. It was a fun time doing that last year, and we look forward to doing that again this year. And I know Mark has Mondays he does a live show, calling. So if there is really some big news for Penn State, you might see Marty or I hop on briefly to talk about it with Mark. So that's our plans. But otherwise, I look forward to heading up to Happy Valley and catching, some nice tailgating weather and the game. And Marty, I don't know what your plans are. Do you plan on going to the game, or?
I may be there. I'm trying to kind of get things figured out this week. I got to look at it. I haven't even looked at my kids' baseball schedules yet for Saturday, but if neither of the kids have baseball on Saturday, there's a good shot we'll be up there as well.
Sounds good. Hopefully we'll cross paths in that case. Anyway, for Tim and Marty, thanks for tuning in. Everyone really appreciate it. And we will catch you soon.